Hello again. Thanks for joining me and welcome. Today, 22nd of September, is the autumnal equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, vernal equinox to those of you watching from south of the equator. And it's already noticeable that the nights are drawing in a little. We've got fine weather today, but that's predicted to be the end of it. I think summer is going to be over and we'll be hunkering down in front of a roaring fire before long. But for those of us in the dangerous goods business, this time of year brings thoughts of what are the regulatory changes going to be that we're going to have to face come January, which is not that far away. And of course, 2021, being an odd-numbered year, brings with it the biennial rule changes across all the modes, hopefully harmonised, but as you will see, not entirely so. So, like I say, we need to get on with this because it won't be far away. And yet, at the moment, there's still a lack of clarity over what those rule changes will be. And that's been caused, of course, by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which is getting worse again in Europe. And while many of us, me certainly, and a lot of you, I know from the talks I've had, have been working from home and not travelling, that has also affected the business of the regulatory bodies, which have since March, April, been unable to gather in the way they normally have to agree and adopt the amendments to the regulations. Good example, I think, is the Working Party WP15, which looks after ADR, the road regulations in Europe and elsewhere. Its last meeting, the 108th session, I think, that was scheduled for May, was rescheduled. It's now due to take place in November. But like I say, with the virus making a resurgence in Europe, even that is in doubt. Now, the May meeting would have been really the last chance for the ADR experts to agree any significant changes in the coming text. And a number of, in fact, quite a lot of items had been held over from the previous session when there wasn't time to agree them. So those have gone unadopted by and large, which means that, as far as we can tell anyway, the 2021 version of ADR will include fewer changes than is normal. ADR, like the other modal regulations, of course, draws a lot of its amendments from the UN model regulations, which had been agreed back in December 2018. And despite the fact that they had not completed the work through correspondence since May, the experts have managed to agree and adopt a few changes that are necessary for modal harmonisation. They've also included a few updates to standards and some outcomes of the working group on tanks. Those largely affect the last two sections of ADR, parts 8 and 9, which of course are not covered by the UN model regulations. I haven't seen a draft of ADR 2021 because I don't think there is one yet. What there is are 3 documents on the UNECE website that summarise the changes that had been adopted and agreed, which have been deposited with the UN. So they should form the basis of ADR 2021. Like I say, I haven't seen a consolidated version. I actually made one myself out of the 3 documents that are there. For the other modes, IMD G-code is going to be an issue, I think. Again, I've seen a draft of Amendment 4020, but it's only a draft. The subcommittee on the carriage of cargo containers, or containers and cargo, was due to meet to adopt those changes which had been drawn up by the editorial and technical group. And of course, that would then have to be agreed and adopted by the Maritime Safety Committee, MSC. CCC, the subcommittee, hasn't been able to meet. I understand that the Maritime Safety Committee is going to hold a virtual meeting in early November, at which point, hopefully, IMDG 4020 will be adopted. Of course, we've got a bit of time with that, because although the new edition of the IMDG code takes effect on the 1st of January 2021, it doesn't become mandatory for another year. The air mode, by contrast, the ICAO technical instructions, and for most users, the IATA dangerous goods regulations, do take effect promptly on the 1st of January 2021. I'm happy to say that the IATA dangerous goods regulations have been agreed, and I believe are heading soon to resellers for distribution to the affected industry. I just heard Dave Brennan from IATA speaking during the Label Line Biennial Web Show this year about that update. And of course, because I think there hasn't been time to fully discuss all the issues that the regulators would like to, many of the changes that you will be faced with next year are those that have been drawn from the UN model regulations. And so that there should be modal harmonisation. I don't know whether that's going, in fact, in the end, to prove the case. There is, for instance, a specific, if I can find it, a specific issue, yes, with data loggers and other battery-powered equipment that's necessary to accompany a consignment. In ADR, for instance, that's going to appear in a new section 5.5.4. Dangerous goods in equipment in use or intended for use during carriage, it's entitled. Now, IATA has picked up on that, of course, but the watt-hour rating of the batteries involved is different. So there will be some modal disharmony. It was interesting, actually, to see Dave Brennan talk about that, because I think he was a bit exasperated that, in fact, ICAO had chosen to vary because they feared that, you know, any size of battery might end up undeclared in a plane. In reality, that's unlikely to happen. There are very few changes to the dangerous goods list. I think there's only 4 new numbers, and 3 of those relate to electronic detonators. The other one is the solid medical waste category A, which derives from the problems that were experienced during the response to the Ebola virus outbreak a few years ago, when it was found that responses to outbreaks like that create such a large volume of waste, and there was no means of disposing or transporting it for disposal under the existing terms of the regulations. So HCB has got an article up on the website now with a brief summary of the main changes to the IATA dangerous goods regulations. There'll be another one along very soon once I finish writing it on ADR, and IMDG in turn once it's approved. The big gap in international harmonisation, as happened last time round, will be with the US, where their biennial harmonisation update rulemaking only became final in May this year, almost 18 months late. I understand from presentations made during the Label Master Dangerous Goods Symposium, which is also virtual this year, that there is absolutely no chance that PHMSA will be able to have its latest harmonisation update rulemaking in place in time. As before, there will probably be an enforcement allowance so that those using the international modal rules won't be penalised for doing so. So it's still a dynamic situation. Make sure you stay alert and keep on top of it, and get in touch with your regular documentation resellers and get hold of the latest editions as soon as you can. HCB will try and keep you up to date and informed, but as always, the devil will be in the details, and only you know what details you're particularly interested in. Anyway, that's it from me. We'll be back next week. And actually, while I'm on the topic, next Tuesday, is the last day of the Label Line Biennial web show, and it will be closed by me with an extended version, I think, of this webcast with some more detail. So I look forward to seeing you all then. Meanwhile, bye for now.